Hi, this is the Year 8 Health and Lifestyle Knowledge Test. All the information you're going to need for passing the end of unit, right, the knowledge test. Right, so what we need to do now is we need to go through the food groups. So what I'll do to start off with is I'll just write down the names of the food groups down the side. So we've got carbohydrates, we've got proteins, we've got fats, we've got water, we've got fibre, we've got minerals, and we've got vitamins. Okay, now the next part of it then is why we need them. Right, so carbohydrates, let's change the colour, we'll go for blue, is for energy. Right, and then what we'll do then is we'll do an example as well. So good sources of carbohydrates are things like pasta, rice. Okay, they're good sources, right? They're full of carbohydrates. Proteins are for growth and repair. Good sources of proteins are things like meat, eggs, fish. Fats, let's go for a bit of orange. Fats, their role is for insulation and an energy store. Okay, and so what they can be is fats can then be converted, that's what I say store, can be converted then into energy. Good examples are things like butter, possibly certain types of meats may well have a fair bit of fat in them. Water, let's go for red. Water is to keep you hydrated. Okay, and then examples of where you can get water from is pretty much any liquids. Right, now obviously things like olive oil and things like that aren't going to contain lots of water, but generally you wouldn't be drinking those. Let's go back to blue. Right, fibre. Fibre is the bulk in food. Okay, and what it does, it keeps you regular. Right, so when you're going for a number 2, right, the fibre is kind of the solid matter that's in there. Good uses or good sources are things like fruit, veg, cereals. Minerals, let's go for a bit of black. Minerals are basically for making chemicals, right? So within your body itself, when you're actually making chemicals within your body, all right, the minerals and vitamins are kind of part of that process and part of the chemicals. So then I'll put in make chemicals there as well. Good examples of minerals are things like cereals. God, can you believe it's about cereals there? Cereals. All right, cereals, bread. Vitamins are things like fruit and veg. Okay, all of them are absolutely essential for your full. Okay, so in the burning food practical, explain how errors can get into your results. Right, so the practical itself was at a boiling tube. Inside the boiling tube, you then had water, and what you were doing is you're measuring the temperature change of that. So what you did is you put your food underneath like that, right? And what it is, the heat went up. Okay. Now the main errors were the fact that you've got heat loss around the boiling tube. Okay, so that's all these kind of red arrows, black now, right? Red arrows going around the sides. And also the fact that the food isn't completely burned. Right, so there might be little kind of bits of it are left. So they're the main 2 errors that can get into your results. Number 3, describe the method and the results you will get testing from starch. Right, so the test for starch, we'll actually do it in black actually. Well, I'll start with brown or that sort of colour. So the test for starch, the test is the iodine test. And what happens is it starts off kind of like a brown orange colour. And if starch is present, it goes black. Right? Sometimes it's kind of called blue-black, right? I'm not quite sure why, because it looks black to me, but it's in the syllabus it says blue-black, so you write down blue-black. Number 3, describe the method and the results that we get in testing glucose. Now, glucose is the Benedict's test. All right, now this is unusual in 2 ways. The first one is the fact that you have to heat it. You have to heat it to about 80 degrees C, right? You don't boil it, you don't just warm it, you heat it up to about 80 degrees C, right? And then what happens is, if there is no glucose, it stays the original blue colour. If there's lots of glucose, it goes red. Right, now, in the Benedict's test, there's also colours in between. Right, now, the way I always remember it is colours of the rainbow are Richard of York gave battle in vain, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Okay, they're the colours of the rainbow. The Benedict's test kind of does it in reverse. So, orange, yellow, that's a very bad yellow, green. So if you've got lots and lots of glucose, it goes red, often called brick red. If there's a little bit less, it's orange, less again yellow, less again green, none, it's blue. And they're kind of the results of the Benedict's test. Describe the methods and results for proteins. Okay, so what you'll have, this is then called the Biuret test. Right, and the Biuret test starts blue if there's no protein, and it goes purple, lilac, if there is protein present. Question number 6, describe the method and results for testing fats. Right, really there's kind of like 2 experiments with this. The first one is if you get a kind of a piece of brown paper, that's supposed to be paper obviously, right, and you rub your food on it, what happens is you kind of get a clear mark on it. So the first test is you get like an oily mark on paper, right? You know when you go to the chippy, right, and then you've got that piece of paper that's around the chips, and then when you actually take the chips out, it's kind of gone a little bit see-through. That's the test for fats. But the better one is you test with ethanol and water, and if it goes cloudy white, then there's fat present. Right, digestive system. Right, let's start at the top. Right, we've got the mouth. Okay, so obviously there. The tube that then goes from the mouth down is the esophagus. Then what we've got is this organ here is then the stomach. Sometimes I'll call it the stomach, right, which is obviously not the stomach, but that's what it is. Then we've got kind of like this little thing here, which is like a leaf-shaped thing, is the pancreas, and that produces loads of different enzymes. Going further down on this side, we've got the large intestine. Then at the bottom, very appropriate, is the rectum and the anus. Right, so the rectum kind of stores the poos before they come out, and the anus then is the part that lets them go. I'm then going to start over here at the bottom left, right, that is the appendix. Okay, so what the appendix is, it's kind of like a vestigial organ. It's not used by us anymore, right, but sometimes if it gets food in it and it rots, right, then it can swell up and then it can cause a lot of pain. The next one is then the small intestine. Okay, which does the vast majority of the absorbing. Then we've got 3 that then kind of go together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the one at the top, which is the liver. And what the liver does, the liver produces the bile. Then what we've got is we've got the gallbladder, which stores the bile. And then there's a little tube here that I'm just going to highlight in red. That is called the bile duct, which then allows bile to join into the small intestine. And the last part, that then is nothing at all to do with the digestive system, is the diaphragm, right? The diaphragm, which then is the control of breathing. Okay, define an enzyme. Right, an enzyme is a biological catalyst, and what it does is it increases the rate of a reaction. Okay, that's what a catalyst does, and an enzyme is a biological version of a catalyst. Number 9, name the enzymes. What are the products of the reaction? All right, so carbohydrate, right? It is carbohydrase. So the most important part of that is ASE on the end. Anything that has ASE on the end, right, is an enzyme. So if I said, oh, there's an enzyme called, or there's something called Mr. Leakase, then you would know it's an enzyme because it ends in ASE. The next one then is protease, and again, it's got enzymes at the end, A's at the end rather. This one is then a little bit different. It's not called fat because the posh name for fats are lipids. So this is lipase. Now, just going back to the carbohydrate one, right, there is an enzyme that is kind of talked about quite a lot called amylase, and that is one particular carbohydrate. Sketch graph showing the effect of temperature on a reaction. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the line across the bottom, right, obviously I used a ruler, right, I'm going to put 30, 40, 50, 60, 20, 10, 0, and at the side here is the rate. So the graph, the effect of temperature, so these are then degrees C, on a reaction. What we have is, in a human, approximately the best temperature for the body, any reactions that happen in the body, is about 37, which is main body temperature. And the graph, it kind of goes a little bit like that, peaks, and then it drops off quite rapidly. Right? So what's happening here is the enzymes are actually breaking down. They are denaturing. Okay, it's called denature. Sketch the graph showing the effect of pH on a reaction. Assume an optimum pH of 8. Right, so let's change the colour. Let's go for green. We'll have 8 there. 7, 6, 5, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12. Obviously that can go up to 14. It can go down to 0. And that there is then the rate. So if the optimum is 8, what happens is it goes up like that and it goes down like that. Right, and it's pretty much kind of mirror image on each side, but then they're not working, denaturing on either side. A weird one is pepsin, right? Pepsin has an optimum pH of 2, right? I'm sure you can guess where that's made. That's made in the stomach. Right, on to drugs, right? So a drug is a chemical that changes the way the body works. Okay, and it can also be the mind. List out 4 categories of drugs. Right, now there are 4 kind of main groups. We've got painkiller, we've got hallucinogens, we've got stimulants, and we've got depressants. Okay, so they're sort of the main 4 categories of drugs. 14. List out the 5 categories of illegal drugs. Include a risk of using each one. Right, so the 4 main types. We'll start with heroin. Okay, horrific drug. If you take heroin, it's often death by overdose, and it is also incredibly physically and mentally addictive. Cocaine, okay, another drug of choice, right? What can happen is once you've had the effects of the cocaine itself, you can feel like you have flu. I don't know why there's an E on the end. You can feel run down, and you can feel incredibly tired, because I guess really what's happening is the cocaine is causing a high, and then what you're doing is you have bad symptoms that follow it. Next one, cannabis. Okay, so cannabis, the main effects are it can affect your heart, it can make you anxious, it can ruin your coordination, and it can make you paranoid. Let's go for green, ecstasy. Right, ecstasy, biggest issue with that is you can get a big increase in body temperature. So what you can be is when temperature, so what you can do, you take the ecstasy, right, and then what will happen is your body temperature will go up. Right, it can make you anxious, and it can also make you paranoid. Okay, final one, we'll do this one in orange, are solvents. Right, things like glues. Right, once you've sniffed the glue or whatever you do with it, right, then what can happen is you can have vomiting, you can have heart issues, okay, and you can suffocate. Okay, so if you think what you're doing is you're getting glue, right, you're sniffing on glue, however they actually do it, I don't really know, right, and then you're putting glue in your lungs. Right, so all these 5 categories of illegal drugs are absolutely shocking, right, and the effects that they can actually have, short term, right, is the effects of the drug that you're taking, long term are all these different things here. Question 15, list the 3 main chemicals in cigarettes and what harm does each chemical do? Right, we'll start off carbon monoxide, tar and nicotine. Right, so carbon dioxide is often called the silent killer. All right, so what it is, you don't hear it, you don't smell it, you don't taste it, right? And what it does is it reduces the oxygen in the blood, right? Because very weirdly, right, with carbon monoxide, when you actually breathe it in, it actually, red blood cells, the hemoglobin in there, actually prefers to have carbon monoxide than it does oxygen. So the carbon monoxide replaces the oxygen. But then also what you do is you actually start to glow nice and red and it looks like you're really healthy. So often when people die of carbon monoxide poisoning, they actually look really healthy when they die. Tar, it can be deposited in the lungs. Right, so think about it, you're getting that black stuff off the road, the tar, you're vaporising it, breathing it into your lungs, where's it going to go? It's going to go down, right, and eventually what it does, it settles in your lungs and it destroys your lungs. Nicotine is addictive, okay, it can increase your heart rate, it can also cause high blood pressure. Right, alcohol, what are the short-term effects of alcohol? Right, so short-term effects of alcohol are sleepiness, poor balance, slurring your words, and kind of blurred vision. Right, so they are then the main kind of short-term alcohol effects of alcohol when you're actually taking it, right, almost like at that moment in time. Longer-term effects of alcohol, which are obviously a lot more dangerous, is you can get damage to your liver, right, and that is then called cirrhosis, right, I hate spelling that word, cirrhosis of the liver. It can damage your heart, it can damage your lungs, right, it can damage pretty much every organ in your body, right, think about it, it can also cause damage to the brain. Keywords, right, so a need to take a drug in order to feel normal is when you're addicted. Eating food containing the right nutrients in the correct amounts, that is then a balanced diet, which I suspect that very, very few people have these days with fast foods. Substance that emulsifies fat, that means breaks it down and neutralises stomach acid, is bile. If you have a lack of minerals, that causes poor growth, that is deficiency, and there's all sorts of diseases that come along with that. Eating the wrong amount of the wrong types of food is malnourishment. Breathing in other people's smoke, absolutely hate it, is passive smoking. So that's then you're walking along and you get a mouthful, a lungful of somebody else's smoke. And the final one, tiny projections in the small intestine wall that increase the level of absorption, is villi. Right, so what I've then done is I've then gone through the whole topic for year 8. You now need to learn all the facts. Okay, and not only do you need to learn all the facts, so where I've given examples and things like that, what you then need to do is you need to be reading around. So read around it, right? So go on Google, look at the digestive system. Go on Google, look at the enzymes, right? Have a look in any textbooks or anything else that you might have, right? And then what you do is once you've done this test and written it down on your piece of paper, there is also on this YouTube channel a blank version, right, which has just got all the questions, and what you do is you play the blank version, pause it on each video, and write down your answers onto a piece of paper. Then go back to the video originally with all the answers on it, or your written piece of paper, and mark what you've done.